This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Coming up in just a moment on this special edition of Real Talk, we get Charles Adler midweek, Johnny, midweek.
A lucky treat.
Lucky treat for us. Usually, as you know, the Emmy Award-winning talk radio legend joins us the first episode of every week. But this week, it's a Wednesday due to technical gremlins. The good news is the top stories that we plan to tackle with Chuck haven't changed, haven't gone anywhere. There's going to be one story we get to today that's a bit of a gut punch, everybody. It seems like everyone's talking about it, but still, it's one of those kind of dark humor type scenarios when anybody says we got to change a politician's polling or we got to make sure that somebody's viewed differently in public opinion. They say, well, you got to get a video of them kicking a puppy. What about releasing a book about killing a puppy? What if it's your own puppy? And what if you're the governor of South Dakota and one of the favorites to be the running mate for Donald Trump, seeking the Republican nomination, wanting to occupy the Oval Office? Well, that's exactly what's happening with South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. We're going to get into that story with Chuck, plus some interesting breaking Canadian political stories, including one involving the federal jobs minister, Randy Boissonnault. Allegations of a conflict of interest. Randy was on the show just a short time ago. We didn't ask him about this because we didn't know about it, but the story's broken. Is it a big deal or not? Optically, I do think it's a bit of a problem. I think he's in a tough spot. We'll ask Charles for his assessment. All of this coming up in just a moment. But first, of course, you know, Real Talk doesn't happen without amazing partners, and that includes Rello presenting today's episode and reaching out to those of you that are ready for a new career, a change of pace. What about real estate? Unlimited earning potential. You're your own boss. You're helping people buy or sell homes, find happiness. Rello is Alberta's top online real estate school. People love it because it's easy to access. Your only commute is to your device. They've also got experienced instructors that help you prepare for the courses, write your exams, get certified, and then launch your career in commercial or residential real estate. There's a special bonus code right now because you're hearing about this on Real Talk. If you're ready to get your real estate career started, check out rello.ca. That's RELO.ca. The code Ryan100 is going to knock $100 off. How's that? Not bad. $100 back in your pocket for both the Alberta Residential Real Estate Bundle and the Alberta Commercial Real Estate Bundle. That's Ryan100, $100 off when you get started at rello.ca. Well, our good pal Charles Adler joins us once a week, and it's always a pleasure to get his common sense assessment of stories making news. Thank you for your patience a couple of days ago, pal. You sat on standby while we tried to troubleshoot, but ultimately had to postpone till today. A true pro as always. Thanks, Chuck.
I prepared. I had several mugs of coffee. I had glasses of juice. I had a cup of oatmeal. I did everything I could.
You did everything within your control.
The best possible mind, even though I've got a bit of a throat, but I worked my tailbone off. But just to be serious about this for a moment, when I was in the middle management a number of years ago, I should tell the men and women who worked with me, who I tried to lead both professionally and morally, to never discuss technical problems on the air.
I know.
Because as far as the listeners were concerned and the viewers, we weren't personalities or hosts or DJs or whatever. We were their friends and their neighbors. There was no barrier. There was no technical barrier. So I used to say, if there's one thing I'd never, ever want you guys to talk about on the air, it's technical issues. There are no technical issues as far as the intimate connection between listener, viewer, and host.
Yeah, and conventional wisdom that still to a certain degree holds true. However, let me tell you this, one of the cool options that we have is on a day where some channels may not be working, we can still reach out to people on other channels and maintain our availability and our connection to this amazing audience. And this is all really just a big plug for our Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter accounts. People can follow us at Real Talk RJ. Follow you at Charles Adler. Making waves on the internet, Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. She's got a new book out. A lot of people figure that she's the favorite, certainly one of the favorites, to maybe present herself as who could be Donald Trump's vice president. She could be the presidential running mate for who we expect will be the Republican nominee, Donald Trump, but shares a story in a book. It's a pretty graphic one, just so people know. Long story short, her family dog, while visiting someone that they knew, an acquaintance, the family dog goes crazy on these people's chickens, apparently kills a few chickens in obviously a dramatic and troubling scene. She decides at this point the dog, who she divulges in the book she had always hated, the dog just had to go. So she took it out to a gravel pit and did the deed. And obviously some backlash online, some outrage online. She's doubling down on it, saying, listen, this is all part of living in rural areas. You got to make tough decisions. She says, I understand not everybody's down with it. She went on to talk about a goat that she killed, and she's just gone on record, doubling down on the whole thing, saying, I killed 3 horses just a few weeks ago. Now, people that work on farms and ranches might go, tell us something we don't know, tell us something new, but it's obviously landing with a big thud online. What do you make of this? A story, non-story? Will it impact her political career?
Well, before anything else, let me try to say something kind here about my old friend Danielle Smith, because I'm often accused of being unkind. This is one of Danielle Smith's role models, Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. Danielle Smith has mentioned that a couple of times. But I just want to say that I know that Danielle Smith loves dogs. Danielle Smith would never take her dog to the gravel pit and shoot the dog in the face. Not something that she would ever do. So for people who say I never say anything kind about Danielle Smith, here it is. Danielle Smith does not shoot dogs.
Okay. Other people are going to go, well, how did this become about Danielle Smith in the first 30 seconds? What about Kristi Noem? How bad is this for Kristi Noem?
I'm talking Alberta, so I think it might be relevant.
I get it.
Kristi Noem, the number one reason that Kristi Noem is a possible Trump running mate is that she has supported everything he has said, including all the controversial stuff. 100%. She backs him. She voted for him, says she voted for him both times, that she'll vote for him again. So she has done everything. On top of that, we live in a video world, a digital world. Obviously, video matters. And Kristi Noem looks like, I'll just try to put this in the most unsexist way possible. She looks like someone who would pass an audition with Fox News. So she passes an audition with Donald Trump, has the look of the running mate if he chooses a female running mate. But beyond that, what's most interesting to me about this story is not that people are outraged that someone would be publishing a book, including graphic stuff about killing animals. Beyond that, what fascinates me is that Kristi Noem and her people, as it were, her associates, including her lover, Corey Lewandowski, who was at one time one of Trump's top people, the idea that they would discuss this kind of stuff before publishing the book, of course, and decide that it's the kind of thing that would appeal to Donald Trump, that this kind of cruelty to Donald Trump would register as moral courage and even political courage. That, to me, regardless of how much I hear about Trump, regardless of my feelings about Trump, that to me is still bizarre, that Donald Trump actually gets a buzz, possibly turned on by this. To be fair, want to bend over backwards as a good Canadian, to be fair here, Donald Trump, to the best of my knowledge, has not commented publicly on this. My guess is he's waiting to see how the Republican base weighs in. Most people who have weighed in, who are conservative Republicans and supporters of Trump, do not support Kristi Noem shooting Cricket, that was the name of the dog, in the face.
Yeah, she's gone on Twitter, says the governor. I can understand why some people are upset about a 20. So here's the wordsmanship, and she's obviously not the only one to do it, but you'll notice all these little things, a 20-year-old story, a working dog. I can understand why some people are upset about a 20-year-old story of Cricket, one of the working dogs in our ranch in my upcoming book, No Going Back. She says, the book is filled with many honest stories of my life, good and bad days, challenges, painful decisions, lessons learned. She goes on to say, what I learned from my years of public service, especially leading South Dakota through COVID, is people are looking for leaders who are authentic, willing to learn from the past, who don't shy away from tough challenges. My hope for anyone reading the book will have an understanding. I always work to make the best decisions I can for the people in my life. The fact is, South Dakota law states that dogs who attack and kill livestock can be put down. Given that Cricket had shown aggressive behavior toward people by biting them, I decided what I did. Whether running the ranch or in politics, I've never passed on my responsibility to anybody else to handle, even if it's hard and painful. I followed the law, and I was being a responsible parent, dog owner, and neighbor. As I explained in the book, it wasn't easy, but the easy way isn't always the right way. I think that this will play very well for her in South Dakota. I think it'll play very well for her on farms and ranches. I think this is a real problem, though, in, I don't know, everywhere else. Los Angeles, Portland, pick your city, New York, Washington, D.C., where most people aren't taking their dogs out to the gravel pits. I don't know. I think there's also a breakdown between city folks and rural folks and how people understand the world to work, generally speaking, outside of this story, too. Probably worth mentioning.
Is Donald Trump having a problem getting people in rural America to vote for him? Is that a hill he has to climb? And what about this business of working dog? Now, I will defer to you. You've got far more roots in this country and in ag country. But what is this phrase "working dog"? If you don't like your work, the dog was a puppy.
Well, yeah, but they don't. But they don't like farm. Well, whatever. I don't speak for farmers and ranchers, that's for sure. But it's the normal protocol on most farms and ranches is that the dogs don't sleep inside. The dogs don't eat inside. The dogs live and work outside. They protect the livestock. They protect the property. It's just it's like a different situation. To be real and get real personal for a sec. We have a almost 12-year-old boxer, Moses, who's in the twilight of his life. We're offering him the best, we've described it as palliative care as we can. Moses is strong as hell on the front, and unfortunately, nature has not been kind to his back end. So he's not mobile like he used to be. As a matter of fact, he can't stand up on his own, and we're doing our best to make him comfortable. And as long as he still wants to be with us, we're going to do everything we can to keep him here with us. Somebody close to me who saw me holding him up while he was drinking water the other day said, Jespo, on a farm, he would have expired 6 months ago. I said, yeah, I know. And then they said, and there'd be no vet involved. And I said, yeah, I know, right? That's just kind of an understanding. So it's a different thought process. But when you're putting it all into a book, and maybe even when you're the one who pulled the trigger, I don't know, bit of a different scenario. Then again, she's dominated the news cycle this week. Everybody's talking about her new book. Most people know the name of it, wouldn't know otherwise. She's also become the star of a social media campaign involving other governors from other states across the union, like Governor Tim Walz, who says, post a picture with your dog that doesn't involve shooting them and throwing them in a gravel pit. I'll start. Post a photo with a dog. So did Governor Gretchen as well. Like you can see all the other governors are posting photos of them with their own dogs. Fantastic photo op opportunity, although the context may be a little grim.
Ryan, on behalf of everyone who watches it and listens, I've got to say something here, and pardon me if it's a bit on the crude side, but if you ever pulled the trigger on Moses, your listeners, your viewers, and your Monday, generally Monday, unless there's a technical issue, but your Monday partner here would leave you, Ryan, because it would be beyond disappointing, and no amount of discussion about working dogs, blah, 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 agrarian culture, no amount of it could overcome the visual of our friend and neighbor and beloved moral leader, Ryan Jesperson, pulling the trigger on a dog that has to be held up to drink water. You can't treat living beings that way. And there's no amount of splaining that makes it any better.
Emmy can on the live chat on YouTube to represent the perspective says, I'm on a farm and my dogs eat and sleep in the house and I currently have 4 of them. So like I said, don't listen to me on protocol on farms and ranches. I'm just saying everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you got the big, you got the dogs protecting the cattle from the coyotes during calving season. I guess it's always calving season, but you know what I mean. John Hicks, everybody.
Don't drag me into
I
this
want to drag
crap.
you into this because I'm going to ask you a focused question because you're an empathetic guy. You're an animal
would you kill
lover.
your dog?
John, would you kill your
dog?
No, but if you were otherwise impressed by a political candidate, if you were considering voting for a political candidate, but then a story surfaced that they had euthanized their own dog legally, but perhaps in unpopular or unmarketable fashion, would that be would that be a deal breaker for you?
For me, it might be, depending on the person. But I think I'm listening to this story. People are so entrenched, especially in their opinions in the States, that I don't think this is a big deal. But I agree with Charles. Like, what does telling this story, releasing a book, and then potentially becoming Trump's running mate do to help Donald Trump? I don't know, because rural is already going to vote for him just like rural votes for Danielle Smith here. So I don't understand why does she feel the need to apologize anyways on Twitter and make a lengthy thing about it? I mean, maybe because they're trying to get those votes that aren't rural and she realizes she made a bit of a mistake. I do think it's kind of weird, and somebody commented this in the chat, just the way did you read the excerpt?
Yeah.
Like, I just queued it up. She's kind of, she's not taking glee in what happened, but it's not someone who sounds like this was like a sad, harrowing experience. It kind of sounds like relishing in a bit in the fact that she had to do this and that she did it herself and that, this is how life is on the farm. I don't know. It just, reading it here in her own words, I was like, doesn't really seem like a sad event that happened for her. It just seems like a way of her explaining how rural life is, right? Yeah. So that kind of scares me a bit.
Yeah.
I always say, people who hurt animals, man, those are some of the most messed up people in the world. But they don't. They rub me the wrong way.
I'm not being disingenuous. I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm
not saying putting down a dog on a farm is hurting them. But I'm just saying,
you know what I mean.
The
like,
people
this
who
is
don't have any
different
feeling when they do it are kind of, they rub me the wrong way.
Well, yeah, and I understand. Yeah, I'll take that point. It's just it's different. Like, can we agree? Or maybe not. Maybe this is not the hill for me to die on. But it's different than if there was like video, where capturing her. Adler's like, oh, you think? No, but it's not like there was video of her.
Let's mark this occasion, folks. The 1st of May, 2024.
Thank you.
Ryan Jesperson decides that defending dog killers is not the hill to die on.
I'm just saying, if this is a different situation than if she was caught on camera, like, abusing a dog, right? It's right. Different. Like, this is a situation where the dog acted badly, where a dog that goes and tears up a bunch of chickens, I'm not making light, I mean, it is what it is, a dog that goes and tears up a bunch of chickens, like, perhaps showed that it wasn't well conditioned enough. She made a tough decision, or maybe it wasn't a tough decision.
That's the other part of the story that's kind of like, okay, so this dog annoyed you, but I get it. Like, some dogs, we talked about this, are straight up assholes. Does that mean they deserve
is he going to attack a human next? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know the dog, right?
Well, nobody knows the dog anymore.
Oftentimes on this show, I'm saying privately and publicly, I love Johnny, okay? I love Johnny's brutal
Are you going to talk about putting me down now?
No.
Jesus. I would never.
Not yet, Johnny. No. That's a different. We'll save that for a different day. You don't want to spill it all on the same show, same episode. But seriously, one of the reasons I love Johnny so much, I'm going to talk about fraternal love here, professional love. One of the reasons for that is because he is so straight from the heart. And what bothers Johnny, beyond the fact that the dog was killed, okay, well beyond that, it's the casual nature of her discussion. Mm-hmm. As Johnny said, almost gleeful. I've known lots of farmers and ranchers. Look, I don't want to pretend that I grew up on the farm. Okay, I'm a city kid. I get that. But I've known many of them. And whenever they do discuss this aspect of life, they aren't this casual about it, and they're certainly not gleeful. They are regretful because they do love their animals. I realize there are a lot of, animal lovers who don't believe that people in agriculture love their animals because obviously they exploit their animals for business purposes. I get all of that. But I rarely hear a rancher or farmer having to deal with this kind of business, okay, putting an animal at the business end of a weapon. I never hear them as casual as Kristi Noem, and I never expect any of them to write a magazine article or a book discussing this in a casual manner.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that I think is a little bonkers, is including it in the book. But then again, if you're writing a book that you want 15, 20 million people to buy. You got to put some stuff in there that's going to prompt them to buy it. Like it's like the Jose Canseco approach to authoring,
I think someone told her like, hey, here's an excerpt you can put in that shows you make tough decisions.
Yeah.
You live the rural life, you walk the walk, you talk the talk.
And it's kind of, if you kind of look at like that sort of, maybe if we include like Lauren Boebert and others into this conversation, that's that kind of like, what's that thing you say, Johnny, all the time? The rootin' tootin' guns. What's like the kind of like the gun holding, like problem solving. Like Chuck, it's like that sort of that classic. We don't see it as much in Canada, but from time to time you do. But that sort of American political picture of like the family Christmas card and like all the kids are holding AR-15s and
there's Cricket
and there's Cricket who's
no longer with us.
Who's no longer with us. Check the book for details.
Yeah, I think she expected a positive reaction from Trump by now. It's been out for several days. Yeah. And all the senator is hearing, all the governor of South Dakota is hearing, unfortunately for her, is crickets. And if there's, I probably don't say any kind things about Donald Trump. If Donald Trump doesn't reward her for this politically, if Donald Trump doesn't praise her publicly for this, then I think that Donald Trump is showing a shred of humanity that he's never shown us in the past.
All right. I think that we've just found the title of the episode. Crickets.
It's the puns here.
Crickets, the puns. Amazing. Lauren in the live chat says this has been a rough conversation. Fair enough, Lauren. We'll get to serious business. Not that killing dogs isn't. I can't believe that's just rolling off my tongue so casually. I hope people understand we take it seriously, and also not, kind of the formula for surviving in life with stories like this. We'll get a little bit closer to home. Chuck, the government of Alberta pulling its support for a low-income transit pass, which has a lot of people scratching their heads, including both of the big city Alberta mayors. More with Charles Adler in just a quick second. But first, we want to put May 9th on your radar. That is when Northwest Fest kicks off. We are thrilled here at Real Talk to support Northwest Fest, which is quite frankly our favorite film festival of the summer in the Metro Edmonton region. You can check out the lineup. It's out now for your review at northwestfest.ca. You're going to be hearing more about it and hearing from some of the extremely talented filmmakers coming up on our Friday roundtable in just a couple of days. That's our May 3rd roundtable here on Real Talk. But I want to put Cigarette Surfboard on your radar. That's one of the ones everybody's talking about, the rousing tale of an impassioned surfer who created a functional surfboard out of cigarette butts. This is a super cool story, and you'll be able to hear from the filmmaker. They're going to be in attendance with some of the surfboards made out of old smokes. Discarded smokes, John, turned into surfboards.
Wow.
There's an entire lineup worth your time at Northwest Fest, and also Real Talk patrons are going to have a chance to win their way into Northwest Fest. Details coming on that on the Thursday episode of Real Talk. You've got to be here on Thursday. That's May 2nd as well, northwestfest.ca. If you're looking to get organized, get decluttered, and you could use some professional help, you're not a designer, you're not going to go to some big box store and get those rickety shelves that you're going to put together yourself. They're going to look terrible in 2 years, and you never know if they're actually going to collapse. Why not go pro with the best in the business? That's California Closets, custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. The best part about this is that there's no risk. It all starts with a free consultation. There's no commitment. You walk in, you meet with their designers, you find out what they can come up with. I love what they're doing with Murphy beds. How many of us have converted home offices into guest rooms or vice versa? It's a great way to maximize your space, and it's easier than you might think. A lot of these are installed in one day, maybe even just an afternoon, with California Closets at californiaclosets.ca. And a shout out to those of you seeking work right now, job seekers that have experience as either solar designers, electricians, installers. Maybe you're an apprentice making your way through school right now. If you're a sales professional, if you have an office management experience, Kubi Renewable Energy wants to hear from you. You're going, what? Are you telling me they're hiring in all of those fields? Damn straight they are. At kubienergy.ca, you can check out the careers link and find out more about the opportunities that lie in wait in their Lethbridge, Calgary, Kamloops, and Edmonton locations. Nobody's installing more solar in Western Canada than Kubi Renewable Energy.
I know we want to move on from the topic, but Whiskey La, or Wise Kyle, says in the comments, there's no vets in the Wild West. Spend $500 to put a dog down or spend $8 to do it yourself. Well, I don't think we're arguing that But here, this is what I'm talking about. These are some of the words from her book. She said, the young dog, so a puppy that she hated, that she put down, was untrainable, and she described as less than worthless. She said she also brought a nasty goat to the same gravel pit and put it down as well. So that's what I'm talking about. I don't mind that like this stuff happens in rural areas. It's just the way someone talks about it seems it's just messed up.
But it's wild when you hear, and real talkers right now are going, didn't you guys just fucking say you were going to move on?
We're done.
We'll move
Now
on.
we're done.
Move on.
We'll move on.
We can't just move on.
But I just want to say, like, that's the whole thing in life. Anytime somebody does, like, it doesn't matter whether you're talking to like somebody who deals with livestock, or whether you're talking, just off the top of my head, whether you're talking to a coroner or a cop or somebody, somebody in the, and we recommend not asking people in the military the details about their service. That's what the experts say. But when when somebody speaks frankly about something they do that not everybody could do or not everybody does, when somebody accurately and candidly shares their perspective that not everybody shares, then it's shocking for people. And I hate to put it out there, but on every farm, when the barn cats have kittens, they're not all driven to like the rescues. Like I hate to sort of put that on everyone's radar on a Wednesday.
Don't destroy my idea.
I'm not trying to. I mean, what I mean by that is they all go to the kiddie kindergarten class and they learn how to. No,
thank you.
All right. A program providing low-income Calgarians, low-income Edmontonians a financial break on their monthly transit passes is losing millions of dollars after the United Conservative Government in Alberta, the provincial government, has pulled its support. The government's contribution annually representing about $4.5 million, which is absolute peanuts on the provincial budget. And then an additional just under $2 million boost for seniors was announced in 2023, just before the election, $1.7 million. So seniors could have their transit passes funded. The province is pulling the entire pot out. Calgary's Mayor Jody Gondek says just hours ago before we're talking, Charles, that she's, quote, appalled the province would slash funding for the pass in the midst of an affordability crisis. And Edmonton's Mayor Amarjeet Sohi has certainly spoken out on this as well, says the low-income transit pass pilot, it was a pilot program, was an overwhelming success. Says Edmonton's mayor, providing opportunities for low-income Albertans to get to work, school, to move around our city. At a time when Edmontonians are struggling to afford basic needs and demand, the program has increased 1.5 times since 2016. The decision to defund it in the two biggest cities shows the province's priorities are in the wrong place. The mayor pointing out that this week, Danielle Smith's government announcing $9 million for a feasibility study for rail, passenger rail across the province. We'll talk about that, what that means in some of those projects. But he says the city of Edmonton already facing financial pressure due to provincial downloading. The additional reduction in funding is unfortunate, which is a word politicians use when their advisors tell them not to swear. I'm a little surprised, more than surprised at this because of, relatively speaking, the small amount of money that this is. But big picture, the population that it'll impact, this is a tough one to manage.
So this isn't conservatism, okay? I know some people get upset because I still think of myself as a conservative. I'm sorry, it's a free country. Free to think of myself any way I want to. And I think of myself as a conservative, and I certainly think of myself as a fiscal conservative. This isn't conservative. This is cruel. And it's cruel to low-income people. Cruel to low-income people in the cities. And if Danielle Smith and her cabal think that the best way of promoting the United Conservative Party is to treat people in the cities who are low income with cruelty, if they think that plays well to their base, I guess politically it's a smart thing to do. But socially, this is retrograde stuff. This is beyond unfortunate, and this is beyond sad. This ought to be unacceptable to all Albertans. I don't care where they live. You don't treat people like crap.
It says something. I mean, every government decision says something. Either, number one, that the government, anticipates that this is a story that'll blow over, that maybe its base or the loudest voices among its base or even its critics will be distracted by or more concerned in other things. But to me as well, when you talk about conservative parties, and we're generalizing here, when you start impacting seniors and when you start threatening seniors' financial viability day to day, month to month, that's dangerous ground upon which to tread. And I don't mean to kind of loop the conversation too far out, but you remember we talked about some of the draw that Naheed Nenshi's been seeing in some of his rallies, seeking obviously the leadership of the Alberta NDP, the former Calgary mayor. And a lot of people have been pointing out how and again, it's risky business to go here because I'm just talking first glance. I'm just talking general impressions, but people have looked at the demographic composition of some of these rooms, the people that Nenshi's drawing, and there's a significant seniors element. And a lot of people, casual political observers and otherwise have been going, well, look at this. Isn't this interesting? Like people you'd typically expect to see at conservative rallies, Nenshi's drawing a lot of them. And what we've heard from a lot of real talkers and even a couple of political analysts is that they think that's a direct result of talk around the Alberta pension plan, right? Of talk of breaking away from the Canada pension plan. And who would that impact most right now? First, seniors, people on fixed income. So this to me just adds another story. It just kind of adds another brick to the wall, so to speak. And it's an interesting move to make. I think it's a bit of a risky move on behalf of the province optically. Once policy starts to specifically, I'll say, target and undeniably hurt the most vulnerable economically and otherwise in the population, that's something that the general population starts to care about if the story's told loudly enough. And this one could be. This type of blowback the government could see on this is not worth $6 million. You know what I mean?
Our elders care about pensions. Our elders care about health care. Our elders care about being able to ride public transit. I don't care whether we're brought up on a farm, a village, a town, a city, a suburb. Most of us are brought up by our elders to care and respect for our elders, and we have obligations to them. And this particular obligation is being shredded. That's something that should never be good politics.
I want to ask you in just a second about a story that's broken in the last day or so. This is a relatively fresh story and on the national news headlines involving a federal cabinet minister that was here in this studio just a short time ago, Randy Boissonnault, a director of a company that received contracts, federal government contracts for PPE during COVID. We'll go to that in just a quick second with Charles Adler. But first, on Wednesdays, as you know, we head out to the mountains courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper. This is a weekly tradition where we fill our lungs with the metaphorical fresh air and remind ourselves that no matter the time of year, it's always a great time to get out and explore Jasper. And in May, this is when the rock climbers really get excited. May is a perfect time of year to experience rock climbing in the Rocky Mountains, and Jasper National Park has some of the best rock climbing destinations in Western North America. The season begins right now, and even total beginners can start scaling Jasper's walls the next days and weeks with Rockaboo Mountain Adventures. They've got a 4-hour tour that visits a perfect limestone wall called Morrow Slabs, which offers beautiful views of the Athabasca River and surrounding peaks. You'll learn to use the gear from professional guides. They're not just giving you carabiners and a harness and sending you out on your own. No way. You'll get expert coaching on specific techniques to climb and rappel before you head up the wall yourself. It's a hands-on experience. It's an absolutely exhilarating way to get off the beaten path and see Jasper from an entirely new perspective. If you're an experienced rock climber, or if you've maybe just dreamed of exploring Jasper, getting into the mountains up close and personal with this fantastic sport, you can check out rockaboo.ca. We'll link to it directly in the show notes. That's Rockaboo Mountain Adventures. Make your own My Jasper memories. Proudly presented right here on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Are you a rock climbing guy, Johnny?
Me, no. Hey, snowboarding, skateboarding.
You'd rather, you're the.
Wife's a big hiker, but rock climbing, I draw the line, Ryan.
I love watching it, and I love the idea of the how the beginners can get involved. Chuck, what's your like outdoor thing? What do you like? How do you like to fill your lungs with fresh air? What do you do when you get outside?
Here's how I'd like to make the point. I mean, I love all your sponsors because I love the fact that people are willing to put their money where their values are on this program. Okay. But my favorite one, just because of the look and feel, is Tourism Jasper. And I would simply ask you on behalf of all of us who love the beautiful, fresh outdoors, the Rocky Mountains, and specifically Jasper, that on Wednesdays, only Wednesdays, that you refer to yourself as Ryan Jasperson.
We thought about building the studio on Jasper Avenue in downtown Edmonton, but we thought that was a little narcissistic, so we decided against. But I'll explore the idea with Tourism Jasper's marketing team and see what they think. This also, by the way, recognizing people, and this won't just turn into a big plug. Don't worry, everybody. We'll get back to talking politics with the Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Charles Adler. But if you want to talk about people putting their money where their mouth is, putting their money where their values are, supporting the show so we can continue offering Canada's best real talk on news, politics, and pop culture, I did make a note here right next to me on the table because I didn't fit something into a previous episode, and I wanted to recognize those that contribute via our super chat on YouTube. It's a great way to throw a few bucks at the show. Maybe you want to guarantee that your question gets asked, or get as close as you can get to guaranteeing that your question gets asked. Maybe you want to recognize a guest that really knocked your socks off, or a comment that you liked. I wanted to thank Cheryl Outside, which seems to be perfect on the heels of my Jasper memories. But Cheryl Outside, we noticed your $5. I think that was during the Connie Walker interview.
Yeah, yesterday.
Which I really appreciated. So Cheryl, a shout out, and I hope that you're seeing this. I wanted to recognize you yesterday. Chuck, we talked to Connie Walker yesterday. She's that investigative journalist, the brilliant mind behind the Stolen podcast series, talking about residential schools, truth, reconciliation, amazing storytelling, a Peabody Award, the Pulitzer Prize, and named to Time's list of the 100 most influential people of 2024. Unbelievable talent, Connie Walker.
She is unbelievable talent, and I'm just so glad that she's on a regular basis associated with this podcast. Congratulations, Connie.
Yeah, let me ask you about this story. It's a breaking news story involving Federal Jobs Minister Randy Boissonnault. I think it's probably too early to call it a scandal, but I would say it puts him in an uncomfortable position, that's for sure. Global News reporting that the federal minister linked to a PPE company embroiled in lawsuits right now. Randy Boissonnault remained listed as the director of a medical supply company for more than a year while it was competing for provincial and municipal contracts. According to business registry documents, it's a company called Global Health Imports Corporation. Minister Boissonnault co-founded the company after he lost the 2019 election to James Cumming, the Edmonton-Centre MP, the Conservative MP. That company outbid multinational companies on pandemic contracts for things like disinfectant wipes, isolation gowns. Here's where it gets inconvenient for Boissonnault. When he won back his seat in Edmonton Center in 2021, he remained listed as a director in provincial and federal business registries, remained listed as a director of the company. They went on to win at least $8 million in contracts. The Liberals kind of have a history. If you look back on you want to look back on the sponsorship scandal, Jean Chrétien. You want to look back on all kinds of look at the procurement around the ArriveCan app. There's kind of this like vibe. When people want to talk about Liberals, they'll say like nepotism and sponsorship scandals and money to friends, and they're certainly not the only ones to do it. But this doesn't help that reputation. How uncomfortable of a position do you think this puts the minister in? How big is this story, do you think?
Well, it is uncomfortable because on the surface it would seem like more than just a trespass. It would seem like an ethical transgression, and that's serious business. That's the kind of thing that causes governments to have a scandal. But on a personal level, it causes good people who happen to be ministers to sometimes be shuffled, sometimes have to resign their jobs, sometimes leave public office. I think of myself as an ethical person, but I do not think of myself as an expert on this particular piece of public ethics, I guess we'd have to call it. And we have lots of guardrails, lots of institutions in our democracy revolving around this. We have an ethics commissioner employed by the federal taxpayers, employed by all of us. I would hope the federal ethics commissioner looks into this and makes an ethical decision.
Yeah, I think, there's been some buzz around this story just over the past, I would say, like 24 to 48 hours. And I've heard some people who I, might describe as credible sources, but certainly not on the record, talking about how they believe, they have, good reason to believe that this was kind of just more of an oversight than some sort of a scandalous cover-up to award millions of dollars that perhaps, Boissonnault not removing or having someone remove his name in documents as a director of the company, that it's more of a this than a that. But all people know, I mean, if you were asked people, hey, what do you remember about the We charity thing? Or what do you remember about Jean Chrétien and the golf balls? People don't remember the deep depths and the details of these stories, right? They remember like one-sentence recaps. Oh, wasn't that something about how he was connected to this, and then they got a bunch of millions of dollars and it was a big scandal? That's kind of how that's how the general public processes and remembers stories like this. And if that's the case, and most especially if the federal ethics commissioner identifies this as a conflict of interest, this could be yet another problem for the federal Liberals and obviously a problem for Randy. It's no secret, and I understand we're talking about a specific riding here, but Edmonton-Centre is a riding to watch, maybe the riding to watch the next federal election in Alberta. Most ridings, and people won't appreciate me saying this for sure, but most ridings, we know which way they're going to go. Now, people campaign for a reason. We conduct elections for a reason. There could be surprises, but there's a lot of ridings that are going to go conservative. There's a couple of ridings with others that'll probably do well. I think that Heather McPherson, Blake Desjardins will probably do all right as NDP incumbents in the province of Alberta. But Edmonton-Centre, man, you've got Randy Boissonnault, the incumbent, kind of the face of the federal Liberals in the province. There's no doubt about that, especially with George Chahal's problems down in Calgary. You got James Cumming, who has been an MP. James Cumming, who is popular, former president of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, a well-respected guy in Edmonton. He's coming back. He wants his seat back. And you've got Tricia Estabrooks entering the mix. So, Chuck, she's the NDP candidate. She has been the chair of the Edmonton Public School Board, a journalist with the CBC before that. She's perceived to be very credible and very popular in the city of Edmonton as well. And the NDP didn't do too poorly with their previous candidate in the last federal election. It was a real horse race, a three-way race in Edmonton Center. So you've got arguably a more prominent NDP candidate coming in who presumably could steal some of the votes from the Liberals. Precious votes. Like, we're talking Boissonnault wins, off the top of my head, I think he won the last election by like 600 votes or something. If the NDP steals some of those, and if Cumming sees some momentum coming back as the Conservative candidate who's done the job before, plus you look at the momentum that Pierre Poilievre's leadership campaign and year and a half or so at the helm has created, this could be, I hate to put it this way for Randy, but this could be the nail in his coffin, depending on how the story goes.
Well, almost 90% of seats in Canada, never mind Alberta, just a general proposition, about 90% of the seats in Canada are safe or virtually safe, virtually a lock for either the Conservatives, Liberals, or the Democratic Party, and of course in Quebec, the Bloc Québécois. So you've got about 10% of seats that are exciting, the so-called battlegrounds, and Edmonton Center is one of the most exciting contests in Canada. So this piece of business is anything but good news for the incumbent Liberal.
Yeah, I'm just quickly searching on the fly because I want to get into election results for the last. So check this out, and this is just Wikipedia as our source. We're doing this quick. But check this out, Chuck. So the last federal election in Edmonton Center, the Liberal candidate, Randy Boissonnault, wins back his seat, taking 16,500 votes, 16,560. The Conservative, James Cumming, loses the election. He was the incumbent in that with 15,945. So, literally 600 votes. Randy wins this one. But Heather McKenzie, who was the New Democratic candidate and ran a good campaign, 14,000, almost 200 votes, 14,171. So, she's only 1,800 votes, 1,700 and change behind coming there. So yeah, I think this is going to be a wild one, and it'll send a message as well. I mean, obviously the polls will be reporting in Eastern Canada first, but once you start getting to Alberta, people will start to see those very few seats that aren't conservative. I think there's 5 of them in the province, something like that federally. What happens with those is going to tell a real tale before we start seeing what's going to happen in BC. Obviously, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but when we're processing the impact of stories like these, and like a lot of our audience checks in from the province of Alberta and from Western Canada, this is some of the, these are some of the angles of approach on the stories that make them more relevant in my mind.
Well, in Edmonton Center, I definitely would take seriously the idea of the NDP possibly winning, because if it is an election that looks like today's polling, if it's an election that the Liberals are seen as sure to lose, many people who do vote for the Liberals in any given cycle vote for them because their favorite party, the NDP, is not likely to get enough seats to defeat the Conservatives, so they vote for the Liberal, okay, because they then see the NDP as a wasted vote. In a case where the progressives in this country don't see the Liberals as winning, that can redound, that can advantage the NDP. So in the case of Edmonton Center, if some Liberals leave the tent, people who voted for Boissonnault last time, it's likely the NDP is their favorite party anyway. So it might redound to Mackenzie if she's the candidate for the NDP. Yeah,
Trish Estabrooks will be the candidate, but I just think I don't know. I see this one going conservative again, but again, this is we're getting way too far ahead of ourselves, and there's a lot of time between now and then. I think if I had to, and a lot of times I'm not very good at sports gambling, Johnny, but I do know if you want to predict like the outcomes of things way in the future, like if you want to place a bet on next year's Super Bowl champion, you stand, all details considered, the further out you place the bet, a lot of times the better odds you can get, right?
Yeah.
Because you're taking more of a flyer on it. So
you want to
the reason you're getting better odds is because you're likely to be wrong. That's the reason. Bookies just care about the math.
Yeah.
The further out you make the bet, the less likely it is that you know the things that you would know a year later when you'd make a smarter bet.
Yeah.
Unless you do like some sort of ayahuasca trip and get a picture into the future,
Man.
Then
this is not my.
Then you're on another astral plane. You're ahead of us all.
We're not going to say his name or anything like that. This is
the guy here.
There's a guy here in this building. This is like nobody cares about this.
This is an insane story.
This is an insane story. Chuck, are you familiar with ayahuasca and what this is? Like I'm getting to.
I'm sure he is.
I'm getting out of my depth.
I'm not, but Johnny's got me very curious as he always does. So tell me more.
Ayahuasca. It's basically ayahuasca is basically made by stems and leaves of different shrubs. It's basically a South American psychoactive brew traditionally used by indigenous cultures and folk healers, including in the Amazon basin for spiritual ceremonies, for healing of a variety of psychosomatic complaints. I have friends personally that have gone on these ayahuasca retreats and have seen
their lives.
It's changed people's lives. Incredible mental health benefits. It's obviously not for everybody. I'm not a medical professional. Talk to your doctor, all that jazz. But basically, it's like you go into the jungle for like days on end, and you do this with a guide, and I'm not sure exactly what they would refer to them as, whether they're healers or guides or what have you.
Usually done in groups.
Yeah, done in groups, and so you take or you use, whatever you call it, you participate in the ayahuasca ceremony, and this lasts for like days, and as I understand it from firsthand accounts, you're sort of like, like puking and like, shitting yourself, and it's kind of crazy. Like, it's crazy.
People have really crazy experiences.
People have wild experiences.
People have said they go on walks with themselves, and then this other self will return them, and they're a different person.
Leaves the body and comes back. And I mean, anyway, it's wild, and people can do their as you say, do your own research. Now people start laughing, but people can read up on it and learn more. This is just a random story.
Guy here.
So there's a guy in our building. We won't name him because it's not our story to tell. But there's a guy that works with us in this building, Chuck, and he's experiencing some challenges with his mental health, and he's very upfront and frank about that. I love that. Good on him for that. And so he's going to go on this ayahuasca retreat. So he goes down to Costa Rica like a few weeks ago, and he participates in this thing. He hasn't been the same since he's come back, by the way. He brought back all kinds of cool stuff, and he's sort of sharing what he learned with other people in the building here. But who's like in the cot right next to him for the entirety of his ayahuasca journey? A-Rod. A-Rod. Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Like arguably one of the biggest sports celebrities of all time. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And someone, and someone who's done the ayahuasca more than once with J-Lo.
Allegedly. Maybe. Yeah. So,
but it just goes to show, like, the people, the caliber of people that are going and using this to get introspective and to, like, a lot of people say, like, they've had problems with, either a death or a divorce or something that's been buried in them for so long. And this just releases it. I think it's, I don't know if anyone out there is dabbling in drug use, but this often happens with psychedelics or drugs like that, where you kind of get a kick in the head when you do them and you come out of it and you're like, I'm going to change. And then a week later you don't. But apparently, with peyote ayahuasca, it's so intense and you do it for so many days that you literally come out of it a different person. And I like that you mentioned that, because I was talking to the guy who is here, and he seems different.
There's a totally different vibe.
A lot more relaxed.
Yeah, he's got a totally different thing going on.
Yeah.
So again, like people in the chat, some of you, like Curtis is saying, try ayahuasca, like absolutely. And others are saying that you've heard, Kimberly, for example, says, I used to follow a YouTuber who had mental health struggles. She did that, ayahuasca, says, but it fucked her up. She ended up passing a couple of years later. So for Kimberly, I know she's not saying the ayahuasca made her pass, but again, it's not.
We've never done it, and we're not doctors. Don't listen to us.
Don't listen to us. But also, like, we've had conversations on this show before. How about, like, even with Dana Larson? Remember the guy that Chuck? You remember him, the Vancouver entrepreneur that mailed magic mushrooms to every MLA in BC over the Christmas break, which was like an amazing publicity stunt. Technically illegal, but whatever. I think that if cannabis is legalized in Canada, we should probably look at psilocybin, psychedelics as well. And I do think that more and more people, this is just a fact, more and more people are looking to alternative approaches to dealing with their mental health. And for some people, microdosing mushrooms or maybe some sort of an ayahuasca journey might work for them when, big pharma has let them down. I'm not saying go off your meds. I'm not saying don't talk to your doctor, but hey, man, this is real talk.
I know.
The more people I talk to about microdosing and this type of thing, the more I'm hearing from people that are seeing real returns on that investment in their mental health. Real.
A lot of people are getting good results from it. But again, we're not doctors. But I laughed at Tawny's because the chat's going off right now.
Of course it is.
Telling their experiences and whether they would or not. And Tawny says, I hallucinated when I took Robaxacet. I think I would die if I did that.
Yeah, no kidding. This is
next time my brain needs a good brooming or Dysoning, I guess.
Yeah.
No, but I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll just consult with my alternate therapist, Johnny Infamous.
Well, no,
and, maybe buy a ticket to Costa Rica.
I'm not an expert at all, but my wife has been interested in it. I think it's something she would like to do, but I'm the same way. I'm scared to death to go to a jungle, take something I've never taken before, knowing it's going to make me vomit and go on a spiritual journey with my potential other self in some other realm. It just scares the shit out of me. But at the same time, I've heard incredible stories of people who were just as scared and had their life changed. So
Seventh
Johnny, if you're gonna take something and vomit, please do it in a jungle, not my living room.
That's a fair commitment that you can make. Seventh Pilot says, oh, sure, legal drugs are working out really well for BC, Ryan. Get a grip. Number one, man. First things first, Seventh Pilot. Thank you for your incredible donation to the show the other day. We appreciate that. We received the e-transfer, and that went directly. Johnny, you want to tell everybody what we just invested in? A new
camera.
We added a camera, Chuck. People are going to get one additional camera angle. Those that are watching the show on YouTube, And that made possible in large part from an investment in the show and a donation from Seventh Pilot, who has earned the right to say things like, Ryan, get a grip. But I will then fire right back at Seventh Pilot and say, talking about ayahuasca and microdosing psilocybins, mushrooms for mental health stuff, talking about legal cannabis is nothing like what BC is grappling with. But I do want to let you know that coming up mid next week, I think it's going to be on May the 8th, we're doing an episode with two voices from BC. I don't want to say which ones yet. One's confirmed, one's pending. I don't want to jinx it. But two strong voices out of British Columbia. We're going to take a look at David Eby in the province of BC rolling back some of its drug pilot programs, rolling back some of its legislation. Obviously, there have been news stories surfacing about safe supply entering the black market. Obviously, that's not what is intended to happen, and it's been a bit of a black eye, so to speak, for the program. People are seeking the truth on this story, the relevant facts. We're going to present a conversation that has depth and is fact-based on BC's drug policy and what it means for the rest of the country. That's going to be coming up on what we believe is going to be the May 8th episode of Real Talk. So Seventh Pilot and everybody else, I hope that you join us. We've got a bunch of people talking about ayahuasca, psilocybins, mescaline. Saucy Sea Witch is talking about that. Some of you are saying that you've been microdosing for years for your mental health. Ken makes a very good point, says be very careful about using psychedelics if you have mental health history in your family. If you're going to try it, be in a safe space with support. I 100% agree. It's not for everybody. And Chuck just laughing the whole time. But listen, this is the real stuff that people talk about. This
Absolutely.
is people's real life. I guarantee everybody listening to this or watching this, every one of you knows somebody that's microdosing. You just may not know it. I can confidently make that guarantee.
We live in a world where people are short on community, not community values, but just community structures. Our various community structures, I don't care whether they're called service clubs, whether they're called churches. The point is, many of us are no longer in touch with communities, so we're only in touch with our virtual communities. That causes a lot of us to be bummed out way too often. And there's a nicer word, I guess, than bummed out. It's mood. We're in a lousy mood. We're in a downbeat mood. We want to have our moods altered. And when you've got a critical mass of people who want their moods altered, you're going to have a very, very high demand for the substances that may help with that alteration.
Agreed. Hey, did you happen to catch our episode yesterday with TAPYEG? Did you hear about this, Chuck? This is Alberta's first municipal political party. So they launched basically on our show. Their website went live the minute that we went live, and it was an interesting conversation, I think, about what the political landscape, municipally speaking, is going to look like in Alberta now that Bill 20 will be passed. Obviously, I mean, you know, the United Conservatives have a majority government. Whatever they introduce is going to pass. Obviously, that's kind of how a democracy works. And so Bill 20 opens the door for municipal political parties. We've had an Alberta Municipalities panel on. The mayor of Wetaskiwin hates the idea, Tyler Gandam. We had a Friday roundtable, my group chat roundtable. They kind of don't think it's that bad of an idea. They think that a little more structure, a little more organization could lead to better candidates at the municipal level. Real talkers, generally speaking, I mean, in this audience, you can't necessarily pin them down, but there was a lot of criticism in our live chat yesterday. Don't think I didn't notice it, you guys. And we got a couple of emails as well. I want to get into them with you, Chuck. If you want to hang out and give us your take on this, democracy at the municipal level. Now, the main concern, we hear one reiterated again and again by audience members, and we'll get to that. They're afraid the waters are going to get poisoned. They're afraid that the partisan nature, the bickering, the showmanship, the grandstanding that we see at the provincial and federal levels will poison the well at town and city halls. But I wanted to get to a couple of these emails as well. Plus, we'll bring you a clip from what we heard from the founder of TAPYEG, that think tank and political party, as they describe themselves. That coming up in just a quick second. First, if you don't yet have plans for recognizing and celebrating Mom on Mother's Day, Friesen Brothers has you covered. You know, they've got 17 locations across the province of Alberta, and at every single one of them, you can pick up a Mother's Day charcuterie box. A great way to treat Mom for all the things she does, to spend time with her, and really great food. Catering by Friesen Brothers prepares their charcuterie boxes with the very best of Alberta deli meats, Alberta cheese, and accoutrement. So easy to order online. You can pick it up at any of their Friesen Brothers locations. They're just $90. You can order yours today by checking out cateringbyfriesen.com. Pathways Alliance knows that global energy demands are changing. They know that the world is demanding responsibly produced oil. And they believe that with their plan of a carbon capture and storage network, that's exactly what Alberta can deliver. You can check out the details online at pathwaysalliance.ca. And speaking of the federal minister, Randy Boissonnault, we talked to him about this exact organization less than a week ago or so when he was on the show. Pathways Alliance is the 6th largest oil sands companies working together and with governments, the feds, the province, to reduce emissions, protect existing jobs, and create new ones. The world wants responsibly produced energy, and Alberta can provide it. Check out pathwaysalliance.ca for further details. A shout out to Real Talker Neil. We've been sharing your email, Neil, and we hope that you've heard it this week. You remember, of course, you reached out to our friends at Complete Care Restoration. Neil experienced a breakdown at his work with a freezer, a refrigeration unit, and they were really concerned that when that freezer ice maker broke down, that it was going to screw up their floor, that the moisture was going to do more damage than just repairing that appliance. Well, so he called the team at Complete Care Restoration. Kelly responded within 24 hours, was on site, on property, making recommendations for Neil's best course of action. Neil said to me, "There is no doubt in my mind that this is a first-class company." Thanks, Neil, for taking the time to let us know about your experience with Complete Care Restoration. And for those of you real talkers that right now are really seriously considering going back to school, you've always wanted that designation, that certification, that undergrad or graduate degree, maybe an MBA, maybe a PhD, but there's barriers in the way. Maybe you don't live close to a brick and mortar university. Maybe your schedule is pulling on your time. You're caring for your parents, you're caring for your kids. Whatever it is, a full-time job, Athabasca University is designed for you with online undergraduate programs, online courses, and professional development. Plus, your schedule is set by you, nobody else. So you're not falling behind if you need to take time away, and you can rocket ahead if that's the way you're wired. At AU, they are empowering learners worldwide. You can learn more about the AU Advantage by checking out athabascau.ca. The April 30th episode of Real Talk, we check in with Al Ammer, Nassim Bashir, and Jeffrey Henson Carlson. They're all board members at TAPYEG, which is the first, as far as we know, first municipal, local political party in Alberta history. They're hoping to achieve great success in October of 2025. That's the next municipal election in Alberta. They believe that they will, quote, form government in Edmonton, which is not language we've heard from anybody in past because there was no such thing. There have been no political parties at the municipal level, but that's all changing with the UCP's Bill 20. Jeffrey Henson Carlson, the co-founder of the party, joins us in studio as they officially launch, and he lays out his bold vision for what they're going to do.
TAPYEG is going to form the next government. That means we're going to have 7 votes on council. We're going to get some things done. One of the first things we're going to do is a plebiscite. And this plebiscite is going to ask Edmontonians to rank order and provide us some meaningful perspective on the 70 or so programs and services that are offered by the City of Edmonton. Some of those will be off limits for obvious reasons, but there'll be some low-hanging fruit. And if Edmontonians through this plebiscite tell us they have no idea what this program is, nobody uses it, nobody gets it, it's a waste of money,
boom, he makes the cut sign. There goes the program. So they're promising a plebiscite. They're promising a tax cut for commercial property owners, for residential property owners in the first 100 days, and an entirely new vision of how municipal government should operate. We've got emails from Jim and Vernon and Gabriel as well, but I'm curious to know your first impression on this story. Have you been following it?
Been following it to some extent. Look, I don't like party politics. I understand why nationally and provincially it's just a way of life in Canada and it's Canadian tradition and it can't be rolled back. But I love the idea that party politics is not the staple at the town level, at the city level, at the municipal level. Independence is the staple. And people who don't want to get involved in all the party politics having to do with bashing, having to do with intimidation, having to do with the deliberate spread of misinformation, having to do with all the things that we discuss on this program all the time, which infect and contaminate and threaten to destroy democracy. I'm glad that we don't have that at the municipal level. Bringing all of that to the municipal level is not what I perceive as progress at all.
Ken says, I'm sure you can form a plebiscite question that can simply decide the fate of 70 programs with a yes or a no. I mean, how long will the question be? Yeah, maybe some sort of polling. I don't know how it would work. I mean, they've got to get to a point. It's pretty fascinating to hear him just say, we will form government. We're going to get 7 seats on council. It's pretty brazen confidence. Jim wrote in and said, I caught just a few minutes of the comments from those tappers, the TAPYEG board members, the responses to your questions. He says, I noted that 3 times they didn't actually respond to your question. The one about union relationships, managing and dealing with unions was avoided almost completely. Your question about where do you see money not being used wisely, Jim says, I'm paraphrasing, the response came back to what I would call a no-brainer commonality, garbage collection. If you want insight on garbage collection in Edmonton, follow Chris Labossiere on Twitter, the guy that formerly owned, remember Local Waste, Johnny? Local Environmental used to be a big sponsor of ours until Chris just did wonderfully, personally and professionally, and sold that company. Congratulations to them. But my point is, he understands the game. He understands the business inside out, and it is an absolute racket what's going on with garbage collection in Edmonton right now. If you look at the numbers presented by Chris Labossiere on Twitter, I recommend you find the thread from about 2 weeks ago. I mean, he alleges that Edmontonians are being taken for more than $100 million a year that they don't have to spend. But back to Jim's email, says that no explanation really of the answer about garbage collection, of how that fit in with the wise use of city money. Overall, says Jim, is after decades of my lifetime watching politicians, that group as a whole should be politically labeled as conservative in the most capital C sense of the word. That from Jim. I don't think that they would disagree with you, Jim. I agree there. The question is, can municipal government still function or function better if you have parties represented? On the pros side of it, you hear the argument that at least voters know exactly what they're getting. They'll see specific policy. They can assume that the votes on council or the tone of that council would be a certain way under a party platform, whereas you've got, as Jeffrey described it, 13 different political parties, as he said, 13 councillors, including the mayor on Edmonton City Council now, so 13 different priorities. But that's the whole point. A lot of other people would argue, yeah, that counselor from ward whatever is there to represent the constituents of that ward.
Bingo.
Of ward whatever.
Bingo.
They're not there to represent the party.
And that's what matters most. I am sick and tired of politicians constantly telling me that they're representing me in Ottawa. They're representing me in Winnipeg. They're representing me in Edmonton. That is baloney. Not to disparage salespeople. We need salespeople. God love everyone out there who's driving right now and at home right now preparing to do a sales pitch. It is very difficult work. But the fact is, members of parliament and MLAs are generally salespeople for political organizations known as parties. I love the idea that in municipal politics, the person in that particular ward is representing me, is representing my neighbor, my friend, not a political party.
Yeah. Now, I have had some people, whom I know and people who are involved in politics, but still crunching the numbers here. So we'll put this number out, but it's not official. This is not from the parliamentary budget officer, put it that way. But it's been speculated that the promised, and people can check out tapyeg.ca for more on this if they want to learn more about this. But it's been presented to us that their proposed tax cuts would represent a revenue loss of approximately $400 million. Now, if that is indeed true, if that is indeed the case, you're talking about a massive hole blown in the city of Edmonton's operational ability. And so that, to me, brings the question back to one that I asked yesterday. It's easy to go out there and promise a tax cut for everybody. Everybody wants tax cuts, but Johnny, you put it this way as well yesterday. Don't you think that the incumbents, don't you think that the city councilors right now also were probably trying to do the same thing through the most recent budget process?
I think if they could lower taxes, they would, because everyone loves lower taxes.
Well, because they want to stay in office.
Yeah, so as they were saying that, I'm like, well, this isn't easily said and done.
Yeah. We've got one here from Gabriel, but I think I'm going to save this for the flamethrower on Friday just because there's so many F-bombs in it that it's sort of a better fit for this weekly tradition of ours presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. The flamethrower, a way for you to blow off a little steam. Get what you need off your chest, courtesy of the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. You can send us an email anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. That's the flamethrower. And Gabe, you're guaranteed to be in. So that'll be coming up on Friday during our Northwest Fest Filmmakers Roundtable, which I'm really looking forward to. Chuck, we're not supposed to timestamp these episodes. That's what the experts tell us. We don't want to talk too much about the day-to-day. But for all those rock and roll and real talkers who have stuck around to this point in the episode, is it okay if we talk a little bit of prediction tonight? If you're listening to this show tonight, if you're watching this on May 1st, the Edmonton Oilers will be back in the capital city looking to finish the Los Angeles Kings and move on to the second round. Can I say your Winnipeg Jets eliminated last night by the Colorado Avalanche, who are looking as strong as they have in a long time? How does this go? Do the Oilers finish it off in 5 games tonight?
I think the Oilers will win tonight, and as a matter of fact, I think they will win big. The Oilers are not a first-round team. In my opinion, they're a third or fourth-round team.
Fourth round,
I want them to go all the way, and I want the journey to continue with great gusto tonight in Edmonton.
I like that. Johnny Infamous, what's your call?
I tend to agree. Yeah, I think this last game, I thought these games were going to be split in LA. And I think this last game where LA came out really strong, really stuck to, I feel like, a game plan of being physical, being on McDavid, limiting Kane and Hyman and all their other big scorers, and still Edmonton pulls out a win, even though just a 1-0 victory. I don't see them finding the key to fix whatever they need to do to beat the Oilers. So, and this is a problem the Oilers have fixed many times. How many times have we played LA the first round? How many times have we won?
Yeah.
It's going to happen again. But I am scared about Vancouver. Have you seen Vancouver lately?
Well, Nashville beat them last night. Don't worry about it.
Okay, but they're using a third they've got their first number 1 and number 2 goalie out, and they still pulled out a win with the third and fourth string guy. So they're a very good team. They're very fast. They're very young. They're dynamic. They can change. They adapt to other teams. So it's going to be great to see 2 Canadian teams square off in the second round here. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the record, and I just feel like Connor himself is not in the mood to fly back to LA. I feel like they've flown back to Edmonton. He gets a couple extra days at his own home. You know, Leon's probably not down for the travel either. Never mind the rest of the team. But these two, I just think that they're ready to get serious about the second round. I feel like they're going to open up the taps tonight. But we could be wrong. We'll see. I mean, I hate to say this. I shouldn't even put it out into the universe. But one of my favorite players in the world is Drew Doughty, and Drew Doughty can be a complicating factor in all this. LA does have some talent. So we'll see. That's why they play the games. But if I had to put my money on something tonight, I'm going to go 5-2 Oilers. The Kings score a late
I agree
one.
as well. I think it's going to be like 4-1, 5-2. Oilers are going to seal this. They're going to make sure because last game people are like, oh, they just narrowly beat them. They're going to make sure it's going to be a decisive win, I think, tonight. And I want a few days off.
Yeah.
You know, I've been doing this show, and every night
Hey, man, talk to us about what you, Chuck, did you know what Johnny's been moonlighting doing over the last couple of weeks? Have you been paying?
What's the great moonlighter doing now, Johnny?
So after the show, I head over, 3 hours ahead of time and get ready for what everyone calls the Moss Pit, but what is the, Ice District Plaza. This year it's called the Ford Tailgate Party. And, thousands of people gather and watch the big show.
Johnny, show this glamour shot of you that I'm showing on the screen
so
right
this
now.
is
Look
what
at
I've
this,
been doing.
Charles.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, man.
It's amazing.
That's hot.
Spinning tunes for 4,000 of Edmonton's loudest fans.
And it's amazing. And they have a win. And my buddy who's there with me is like, let's go out for a drink. And I'm like, it is 12:30 and I have to be at the studio at 7. So no, but it's great. It's electric. The city's on fire. But I would like this round to end a little early so we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off before we start the next round. I believe the next round is going to start Tuesday.
Does this work the same way? The offer that I extended that I told you a couple of people cashed on and passed, Chuck, from time to time, if I'm going to be out at an event, Tucker Carlson speaking in Edmonton was one of them. I'll say to Real Talkers, if you see me out in the wild, and this isn't every time, but if I've put it on the record, if you see me in the wild and you come up and you say the code word, and we try to make it fun and interesting and different every time.
Ayahuasca.
You get the next code word might be ayahuasca. You win a free beer or a free journey to Costa Rica with me and Johnny and Chuck. But does the same deal apply if folks come up to you at the big party outside and,
Sure.
and say Real Talk RJ, you'll buy him a beer?
I'll give them $1,000 if they come say hi, because you can't get out on the balcony.
Because you're covered by
it's
security.
Restricted. This year it's very, I mean, you can get up into Molson Hockey House, but there's security right at the door. It's restricted access. We have passes. So.
I love it. All right, well, go Oilers. We got a bunch of people here in the chat. They're not everyone's picking Edmonton though, but I got some people cracking down on Drew Doughty. Now, come on, you guys. I get nobody wants to hear me pump Doughty's tires while they're playing the Oilers in a playoff series, but he's one of the all-time great Canadian defensemen and a great personality of the game. Chuck, thanks for hanging out with us into overtime.
Sorry about your Jets.
Sorry about your Jets. And
Sorry. By the way, I think one of the reasons Edmonton's got a great chance for going all the way is I think this year they are very strong both ways, offensively and yes, defensively. Yes, offense puts fannies in the seats and all that, but defense wins games. You got to be big. You've got to hit and hit and hit, and Edmonton's doing that this year.
We love you, Chuck. We'll talk to you next Monday.
You bet.
That's Charles Adler, the Titan of Talk, Emmy Award-winning talk radio legend, once a week, exclusively here on Real Talk.
It's never enough.
Never enough. All right, so you know what's coming up on Friday's Real Talk. We've let you know about our Filmmakers Roundtable. That's going to be a lot of fun. Coming up on Thursday's episode, that is May the 2nd. We're going to check in. You may have seen this guy talking on CNN. You may have seen his op-ed, his opinion piece that he contributed to Newsweek. He's a Palestinian that was in Gaza for many, many years. He's obviously got a heart for his people, but he's got some strong words of criticism aimed at the demonstrations and protests being held at North American universities. Hamza Hawidi is going to join us live from Germany on the May 2nd episode of Real Talk. It's a conversation you will not want to miss. Thanks for being a part of this one, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hick.